What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Today, we've got our early player props for the Super Bowl 58. I am your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network. And on today's show, we're going to dive into our prop betting approach for the Super Bowl. And we'll each give out three picks that we're looking at early on in this week. We're going to discuss where we see, value, if there's anything to jump on now. And of course, we're still a week and a half out for the big game. So be sure to keep an eye out for our full Propapalooza episode. We'll have that next week with an even deeper look at Super Bowl prop bets. But we wanted to have a shorter episode this week, with some initial props. And of course, joining me, one of the most accurate rankers in the game, the most accurate ranker this year, of course, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. What's going on, Sean?
What's up? Yeah, just excited to finally lock in some official Super Bowl, props and bets here. So super excited for this.
Yeah, let's get right into it. We'll go back and forth. You can start us off. We'll give three each. Where are you going for your first Super Bowl 58 prop?
Well, as I always say, this is the only game where we can really bet on some fun punter props. So I'm going straight to the punter props, kicking it off with Mitch. Wishnowsky, longest punt to go over 55 and a half yards. It's at minus 115 right now. But he's had a punt longer than this in 14 of 19 games this year. So that's a 73% hit rate. Now, 5 of those times, his longest punt was exactly 56 yards. So it's absolutely critical to get the over here at 55 and a half, just because he's been hitting 56 so frequently. It also means that, he's probably unlikely to clear it at such a high rate since he's just barely going over so many times. But I think there are, a few reasons to like his upside here. Regardless, the first is this game's at Allegiant Stadium. And I went back and I looked at the last 3 seasons, how punters fare there. And typically you see an average right around a 3% increase in their punt yards. It's indoors, so that's going to help. It's also, Paradise, Nevada is around 2,000 feet above sea level, so that probably doesn't hurt. So either way, just punters typically average, an extra yard and a half at this stadium. So it's a great place to punt. And he's only played 2 games indoors this year, and both those games he had a punt go longer than 60 yards. So he's been really good punting indoors this year. He's also averaged just 3 punts a game. I mean, the Niners don't really have to punt, so this is going to be a really tough matchup for them. The market has them punting around 4 times here. So he's going to probably have, on average, an extra punt here, which is massive for a prop like this. So 32% of his punts have cleared this. So I think if he has 3 to 4 punt attempts, should be enough for him to get one over this number. I have his median closer to 58 and a half yards, with him around a 62% chance of clearing this. Again, like I said, probably won't be 73% going forward, but I still think it's above 60%. So love the value we're getting here. And I'd probably still bet this at 56 and a half, but it's really key to get it here at 55 and a half.
Yeah, and I think also when you look at Kyle Shanahan and just his style of coaching, he's not going to be super aggressive on 4th down. I don't think. He tends to play it fairly conservative. He's not going to do anything crazy, fake punts, things like that. I think he went on a whole diatribe about how he doesn't really care for fake punts and things like that. So you should at least maximize your chances of punts here facing the tough Kansas City matchup. All right, for my first prop, I'm going with Isiah Pacheco to have the most rushing yards in the game at plus 170. I think, Christian McCaffrey obviously should be the favorite, but his odds are minus 250, and I think they're creating value on the only other player I think has a pretty realistic shot at this in this game, and that's Pacheco. He led each of the 3 Kansas City playoff games in rushing, and McCaffrey didn't lead either of the Niner playoff games in rushing. So this is something that, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. And then you look at defenses, and we know Kansas City's had the worst run defense for the year. But in the playoffs, Kansas City allowing 4.6 yards per carry along of 21, and they allowed about 113 yards per game, whereas the Niners are allowing 156 yards per game on the ground and 5.6 yards a carry with a log of 53. They've given up at least a 42-yarder in each of their 2 playoff games. So the Niner run defense trending downward a little, playing Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that you're going to all of a sudden, pay more attention and try to shore up some of those things any more than, you can without, giving up more against the pass. So you should still see some vulnerabilities for San Francisco on the ground. And then, Patrick Mahomes, we know what he could do as an underdog and all those kind of things. And San Francisco is favored. But if the Kansas City Chiefs were to have the edge or win the game or whatever not, you would project those carries to tick down for Pacheco, for McCaffrey, and tick up for Pacheco. Right now, McCaffrey projected for about 2 more carries than Pacheco. His carry prop's 18.5. Pacheco's a 16.5. But if you flip the spread, for example, let's say Kansas City were to win by 2 or something like that, they'd be a lot closer to even in terms of projected carries in this game. So I think Pacheco's odds should be closer to plus 130. So it's still plus 170. Love it at that number. And I think there is a little bit of value there.
Yeah, no, I like that one. And I think when it comes to McCaffrey, he's probably going to see like every running back carry for the Niners. But in these spots, they're going to want to get Debo some more design rush attempts. So like I think he specifically could eat into CMC's workload and hurt his ceiling, which is what this market's all about.
All right, where are you going for your next one?
I'm going with another punter prop. Tommy Townsend, his shortest punt to be over 36.5 yards. So I don't think he's going to have any punts under 36.5 yards here. Only 9 of his 69 punts this year have stayed under this. So 87% of the time he's punting it 37 yards or longer. He's averaged more punts a game than Wishnowsky. He's averaged 3.5 punts per game. They're both projected to see right around 4 punts. So while, he should see, more punts in this matchup, it is a tougher matchup than the Chiefs usually face. Just an extra half punt isn't that big of a deal. But, a prop like this, we don't want him punting the ball like 6 times or something like that because it's more likely to have a short one. But he's also going to benefit from punting at Allegiant in Vegas. Like I said, typically we see punters average 1 to 1.5 more yards on average. And Townsend, he's benefited from punting indoors this year. Outdoors, he's averaging 46 yards a punt. Indoors, it's 50 yards. And in fact, only 12 of his 13 punts indoors have cleared this number. So he's punting higher than this at a 92% rate, which is higher than his overall season number. So I'm showing his median, closer to 38.5, I think would make sense for this prop with a 59% chance he doesn't have a punt going or this. But I think when you factor in, that this game is indoors, I think that helps a bit. So I would say probably a 63% chance, somewhere in that range, that this one cashes as well.
Just a quick question for shortest punt props. If there are no punts, does that count as action still?
I'm always taking worst case scenario. So I'm assuming that. So if he doesn't have a punt, I'm guessing it would be a push. I think, books might have different rules for that.
Okay.
I'm having, it's about a 2% chance he doesn't have a punt. So it probably won't be, a common occurrence, but I'm already under the, so again, I'm doing worst case scenario where if he doesn't have a punt, I'm grading as a loss and I'm still showing a 59% chance. So if the book does say like, if there's no punt, this is a void, I would actually say this is closer to a, 63, 64% chance of clearing it. So yeah, that's a great question. I didn't find anything out there. I think in the past I have found that it's like, if there's no punt, it's just no action.
Okay.
But again, for the worst case, I'm assuming worst case scenario that is action, and we're still showing some value on this.
All right. I like it. My second prop is going to be the Chiefs' first team to use a challenge at minus 115. I think this should be closer to minus 140. Now, there is always a chance you just don't get action on this if neither team uses a challenge. But for their careers, Reed and Shanahan aren't too far off in their use of challenges, but the last 3 years in particular, it's been trending toward Shanahan using less challenges and Andy Reid kind of staying pat. So over the last 3 seasons, Andy Reid has used 17 challenges in 60 regular season or playoff games, so averaging about 0.28 challenges per game. Whereas Shanahan, last 3 years, just 12 challenges in 59 regular and postseason games. So that's just 0.20. So if you kind of factor those together, you get about a 58% chance of, if there's a challenge, Reid more likely to be using the first one. So books are pricing this kind of even. I'm seeing, 115 for the Chiefs, 110 for the Niners, or vice versa. But I think this should be a little bit more skewed in favor of Andy Reid to use the challenge first. So give me the Chiefs to use the first at minus 115.
Love it. I love these ones. I love the first time out. Unfortunately, I did a deep dive on that, and it's literally a coin flip. Both coaches just fly through timeouts. They waste them at the same exact rate, so couldn't find any value there. This is interesting. I'll probably be joining you on this. Love it.
Well, this could be also a tiebreaker in that market, because if you lose a challenge, if you're the first, like if the Chiefs are more likely to use a challenge, you're also more likely to lose a challenge first, which would then be a timeout. So
last year, I love the Eagles. Unfortunately, it didn't hit. But Reid is good. He just uses timeouts like they're cheeseburgers. He uses challenges. So that I want something like this to sweat. So I'm going to join you on this.
Love it. All right. Third one. Where are you going?
I've got a defensive player prop. I'm going with Charvarius Ward under 4.5 tackles and assists. You can get it at minus 120 right now. He's been held under this in 10 of 17 full games. So there was a game he left early, and then week 18 he barely played. So I omitted those. So he stayed under this in 59% of his full games. However, this is a matchup where he might not have as many tackle opportunities as usual. He's typically going to be covering whichever Chiefs wide receivers lined up on the far right, which is where Ward's going to be over 90% of the time. And Rashee Rice, obviously he's the danger in this. He's going to rack up the receptions, but he lines up on the right side the least, just around 20% of the time. So it's likely Ward will be on, MBS and or Justin Watson for most of the game. And he's the Niners' best corner, so it would make sense for the Chiefs to kind of scheme that up, and let Rice and Kelsey have the weaker matchups inside or on the left side. So both MVS and Watson are low target wide receivers, and they tend to run routes downfield, so that could take Ward out of the play a lot of the time, where he might be involved in like a Pacheco screen pass or Kelsey target over the middle. But if they're going deep, it's going to take him out of the play more often than not. So having said that, I have him projected around 1.5 tackles in the run game and about 2.5 in the passing game. But so 4 tackles. But again, I think like he's more likely to have a floor game in this market. So I have him around a 61% chance he stays under 4.5 tackles and assists here.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I would have thought, looking at, how are teams attacking San Francisco on defense, running outside, which is what teams have been really successful with. I would have thought that would have kind of negatively impacted Ward, but I just looked at his, his game against Detroit where, they were really kind of exploiting that. And he only had a 1 combined tackle and assist in that game. Yep. And I mean, that's probably because, they didn't fare too well on those runs to the outside. But, that kind of speaks to, that's probably your biggest danger here. And it's another way to fade Justin Watson, which I feel like you've been doing all playoff long. So
one of my favorite things to do. One of my hobbies is fading Justin Watson in the right spots.
Yeah, he's fun fact, Justin Watson, I believe he was on that Tampa Bay team that won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then he was on the Chiefs last year, right? So he's got quite a little I'll be 3 and 4 years if he can get this one. So
I'm still fading him, but that is impressive.
He's a winner. He's not a guy. Yeah, he's not gonna put up the numbers.
Yeah.
All right. I'll close it out with a kickoff return prop, and this kind of speaks to what you were talking about with, the indoor stadium and whatnot. I'm going longest kickoff return under 27.5 for, both teams. And the reason being, I think you don't see many kicks returned in this game. Harrison Butker for the season is 7th best out of 33 qualifiers, according to Pro Football Focus, in percentage of kickoffs returned. Just 15.8% of his kickoffs have been returned. And then Moody for the Niners, early in the year, they were trying to, pin opponents deep and have them, return kicks from, like the 1 or 2 yard line. So his first 68 kicks, 31 or 46% of them were returned. But they kind of switched strategy up. I remember reading something in, from a beat writer about that, kind of late in the year. So that's kind of played out. And we've seen just 4 of his last 34 kicks return, just 12%. Now you're going to be playing indoors. And for the year, Moody outdoors, 33% of his kicks have been returned, but indoors, that cuts in half to just 16.7%. So I think you have a lot of things working in favor for Moody to kind of be similar to Butker in that he's not really going to let many kicks get returned. And then if you just look at the prior stats for both of these teams, San Francisco had a kick return of 28 or more in 7 of 19 or 37%. Kansas City only 3 of their 20 games of 15%. And I think if San Francisco puts Debo back, because he's obviously a better kick returner than, McLeod, but if they put him back there, it's just going to give even more incentive for Butker to just boom it out of the end zone. And the game is indoors. So I think there's a really good chance we only see, 1 or 2 kickoffs total for the whole game. And so that gives a really good chance for this number. So I bet it, it's hard to kind of calculate this because it's such an obscure market.
Yeah.
But, I think at 27.5, I think you have some clear value, up until like minus 125. And then, if it was like a yard lower, I would still bet it at like, even juice, like minus 110 at most. But like I wouldn't go crazy. But it's just really tough to kind of calculate the true value here. But I do show some decent value here just because I don't think many kicks will be returned as typical, especially with the Niners trending down in terms of even like kind of planning for that.
Yeah, no, I'll have to look into this. I trust you on the under here. And Richie James has been, one of the worst kickoff returners in the league. So that'll help even if Moody doesn't kick a touchback. It looks like Richie James has been pretty poor. So I'll have to look into this. But yeah, this is a fun one. Again, I think Allegiant Stadium is just a really good place for kickers. Because indoors, obviously, and the elevation is probably somewhat of a factor. So, yeah, that would play in here as well.
All right, let me recap each of our 3 props. Sean, you have Mitch Wishnowsky, the punter for the Niners, longest punt over 55.5 yards. Your second is Tommy Townsend, the punter for the Chiefs, shortest punt over 36.5 yards. And then Charvarius Ward, the corner for San Francisco, under 4.5 tackles plus assists. I have Isiah Pacheco, most rushing yards in the game at plus 170. The Chiefs as the first team to use a challenge at minus 115. And the longest kickoff return by either team in this game under 27.5. So that's going to do it for our Super Bowl 58 early props episode of the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. For more fantasy content from Sean and I, be sure to check out the Fantasy Flex. We'll have our full fantasy preview episode looking at how to play the Super Bowl matchup in DFS next week. If you're into betting, my weekly betting episode with Stuckey and the 6-pack will be right here. That will be coming out early next week as well instead of midweek on Thursday morning like we usually do. So look out for that a little bit later, but we'll have our usual 6-pack and everything for that. ActionNetwork.com for all of our NFL betting and fantasy content. FantasyLabs.com for our DFS tools and models. Don't forget the Action Network Discord server. Link will be in the episode description for that. Sean is on X at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.